and this morning I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the cane toads, the marine toad, Rhinella marina. They're formerly Bufo marinas. They're very large, heavily built amphibians, and they're native to Central and South America. And you know, a lot of us may be familiar with their history. They were introduced into Australia and other countries in order to fight the cane beetle. It was not very successful. Actually, it was not successful at all. They were introduced in small numbers, but went ahead and spread into thousands and millions in some area. Now, a lot of debate about the cane toad is, are they actually invasive or are they beneficial? You know, some of us in these countries where they have now been introduced can actually say, no, they're not beneficial. But there are those that are saying, you know, they help with pests such as mosquitoes, which are vectors, rats, and other issues. And they also are a concern for public health and our biodiversity concerns. So we're under the debate whether we should be controlling these animals or just leave them alone to their own devices. Now, as some of us are aware, the life cycle of the cane toad, all stages of the life cycle are poisonous. So you have the eggs, tadpoles, as well as the toadlets and the adults. And the adults, do we have a pointer? No pointers? Okay. Well, the adults can get very large, sometimes up to about 12 inches, up to a foot or more in size. We've had we've had a cane toad in the Bahamas that was about 5 pounds, which is very large, yes. And as we are aware, these parotoid glands are behind here are where the poisons are excreted from, and they're very dangerous to small pests, and they can also be a threat to humans as well. If it comes in contact with the skin or gets into the system, or you know, it can cause an instant heart attack for some small pets. The habitats, they are nocturnal animals, and they're usually found around the water edges, especially the males, because that's where they sit and call and wait for the very large females to come along so that they can reproduce. And they lay their eggs in small, shallow bodies of water. They prefer human-disturbed areas. They really don't care. They'll be found in residential areas. They're not afraid of us. If you see them, they look like bulldogs, and they're very threatening, and they kind of tell you, like, okay, come ahead, come on. So they will sit there and look at you for a very long time before they actually scamper off and run. And they will eat anything, as we are becoming aware of. We found plants in their systems, bugs, other frogs, possibly other toads, cat food, dog food. They're very opportunistic. Now, some of the issues that we've had is that we only have really 2 native frogs in the Bahamas, and we have 2 other introduced frogs and another toad, which are pretty much harmless, and they're actually beneficial to our environment. But in some stages, the cane toad looks similar to some of our native frogs. So we've been having an issue now of the cane toads being mistaken for the native frogs. And so we're trying to do a whole educational program. Now, this actually just came about recently. It wasn't until August of 2013 that we started getting reports of the strange toad in one particular area of New Providence, which is the capital of the Bahamas. And it seemed to come in at all the same time. You know, before we weren't really hearing anything about it because people had apparently been seeing these animals but didn't realize that they were something that wasn't supposed to be there that could be harmful. And it was confirmed after we did a rapid assessment. We thankfully, at the same time that the reports were coming in, we had a team from the South Florida herpetologist response team passing through New Providence, and so they were able to go and go into the one area that it was identified, and we realized that they were actually breeding. You know, there was one pond where we found the thousands, potentially more, tadpoles just thriving in that pond. Now, just so that you can get an idea, this is a map of New Providence. New Providence is 7 miles wide and 21 miles long, so it's a very small area. And knowing the nature of these animals, they can basically spread throughout New Providence very quickly. And then we also have transport going between the various islands of the Bahamas, so there is the potential for them to spread onto the other islands. Now, the cane toad was actually found in a very small gated community on the western end of New Providence, which has great potential for us for better controlling and eradication of them. Initially, what was done once we found out, because everybody is aware of social media, once the news of this cane toad was out, it was all over Facebook and in the newspapers. We had the killer toad that invaded the Bahamas, and yes. So immediately, the Ministry of Environment called a press conference with some of the local stakeholders, basically trying to develop a task force in order to come up with a strategy, also to notify the public that yes, there was a cane toad that was found in the Bahamas, that we are doing things about it, some of the things they should be doing as far as, you know, don't go ahead and try to kill it basically by cutting it up, because the potential of, you know, the poisons getting in contact with your skin, what to do if your animals get in contact with them. We contacted the Veterinarian Association, so everyone was aware of what was going on and what are the things that they should be doing. Immediately, what the task force did was get together and started trying to come up with a strategy. So what we did was begin culling exercises. So we had volunteers that came out. It was government, private, everyone got involved, and we had expeditions at night where we went out and collected cane toads. I can say that to date we have collected over 500 specimens of adult and juvenile cane toads. We also attacked it at all life cycles. So being observant of bodies of water, whether it's ponds, fountains, educating the actual residents as to what to be looking for the long stringy eggs, what to do, take them out of the water, let them dry out, keep them away from the pets. We were collecting the tadpoles, we were treating the ponds or bodies of water that we found them in order to make sure that every stage of the life cycle, we were attacking them. We were also helped in that we have a local app called Click 242 Nature, which basically highlights the environmental work that's going on in the Bahamas. And they developed a form for us, so they helped us with data collection out in the field, where we were able to get GPS points of where the animals were located, the sizes, the numbers, adults, females, so that we could better have an idea of what it is that we were facing. So it helped us a little bit with logistics out in the field as well. And like I said, we had lots of sectors that came out and actually volunteered. We had some of the residents that came out every night with us from the Bahamas National Trust, as well as members from the Department of Environmental Health Services, the vector unit that came out and collected on the culling exercises. A part of our strategy was also, like I said, training and education. We needed to make sure that persons knew what it was that they were looking for, they were aware of what was going on, they weren't going out and killing native frogs. So the training aspect of it became very big, and we really worked with a lot of the ground staff, landscapers, security, the housekeepers, household staff, that were more likely to come in contact with these animals. We had the program included bringing specimens. We had specimens of both the cane toads as well as the native native frog species, so to help them to identify them at various stages and what characteristics that they should be looking for, as well as proper handling methods. We didn't want anyone going out there using their bare hands or taking a cutlass and trying to cut it, and then the risk of poisons getting in their eyes and all of those things. We also collaborated with the College of the Bahamas, and they have been doing dissections of some of the toads that we've collected, basically looking at stomach contents to try to determine what it is that the animals are ingesting. And it's very interesting because a lot of the females, we were finding that they were eating a lot of the plant material, and because they were located further away from the pond. So they were eating things like sea grapes. We found some palm seeds, a lot of vegetation. But again, the one that I talked about earlier, which was the 5-pound toad, she was actually eating cat food, because the security officers would go out and feed the cats at night, and they're stray cats. So they'd feed the stray cats, and the toad would just sit by the bowl and eat all of the cat food. So she became very fat off of all of this cat food. And there was one that we found, a skeleton, but we think it may have been another cane toad. We're not sure exactly what it is, so we have to continue analysis of those. And as well as over here, that's from the stomach of a male, and that included a lot of insects such as beetles. There were some grubs, I think a snail, everything. So most of the work that was done was a collaboration between private and public sector, and most of the funding was actually came from the public sector. A strategy has been developed and submitted to government. The cane toad has been listed on the Bahamas National Invasive Species Strategy as an invasive species, and has been listed for eradication. Since we've been working on the project, there have been a few reports of cane toads outside of the gated community, but in a lot of cases, those have been isolated reports. There may have been one animal that could have gotten away, maybe through landscaping use, or because we have a lot of the landscapers that work in that community and other places. So, and they are very good hitchhikers. So we're not sure exactly how that's working. So some of our possible next steps would be to expand our public education outreach program. We also need to continue our collections. During the winter season, for us, during the winter season, it cools down a little bit for them, so there was not as much activity. Collections continued, but we weren't getting significant numbers. But we have recently had reports of the males out at the ponds calling, so they are getting ready to start again. So our efforts are going to have to step up a little bit more. We also need to develop a media plan, so we need to work with the media, basically so we don't have any more of the attack of the killer toads and basically frightening the public, and it's more of education rather than. Also developing a social media plan, because like I said earlier, the news of the cane toad spread mainly because of social media, and so we need to get to that platform before the horrific news gets there, or the falsehoods. And we're also looking at developing more applications to help with reporting, not only for the cane toad, but as well as for other IAS that have the potential to spread. You know, one of the things that we saw that came out of this is that the public may be seeing things out there, but they're just not reporting it because they're like, okay, well, I don't know who to go to. You know, so with the use of all of these smartphones, we're looking for an application that where you can take your photo, upload it, and say where you saw it, and have somebody take a look at it and identify what the animal is. Is it a potential ISA? Is it not? Those types of things. And There are just a few questions that came out of this incident. You know, exactly how secure are our borders? What else can we be doing in order to prevent future incidents such as the cane toad? What needs to be done to protect our borders? And how do we respond to ISA introductions? And like I said earlier, who should the public be going to? Where should they be reporting these things? And if you can take a look at this one here, this is a photograph of one of our introduced frogs, well, native frog, and they look very similar to the cane toad. So education is going to be something that's very important so that we're not hurting our native frog population. So, thank you guys very much for your attention. Are there any questions?